1 foot apart and it's too dense a shade. And I mostly just think of that as food for the rabbits. And I'm actually thinking about 4 or 5 feet apart is like the optimal amount of shade for the other crops that we have underneath there. Some other sources of fertility. Now, compost is the #1. You've got to have a compost pile. Everybody, if you don't have a compost pile now, go home, start one. Nitrogen-fixing plants, which the Lucena is, you know, your peas and beans and those kind of things, which you can grow year-round. There's all different kind of peas and greens that grow in different kind of weather. They actually can help add fertility to the soil. Compost tea is a whole technique where you take the compost and then you brew it with water. It's a cold process. It's not like you boiling the compost. But basically what you're doing is you're multiplying the number of bacteria you have because it's the friendly bacteria in your soil that you're trying to encourage. You place that over your plants and it really is almost miraculous what compost tea can do. And it's easy to brew. You need a 5-gallon bucket and a little fish pump aerator. Urine. You know, I mean, most of us are kind of, ooh. It's got about 18% plant available nitrogen in it. And I know quite a few people that have these amazing gardens that they're using almost all, you know, all their old urine goes on it. And or sometimes one woman had a bed and breakfast and all her guests urine were going on it. You know, it's an incredible resource. It's just go and talk about pissing things down the drain. And humanure is another option. I have to say personally, humanure takes a while. I'm not as enamored with humanure. You know, it takes about a year or so to compost out the pathogens. But there's, you know, a lot of people that do it. And you know, I used to travel around Southeast Asia, and believe me, there's a lot of people that don't wait. You put that, you can smell it. They put that right out on the fields.
We have dillo dirt here.
Yeah, dillo dirt. I'm on the fence with that one. You know, I have to agree with the people that say that all the hospital wastes and things like that and stuff people throw down toilets makes me real nervous. And can they really compost that out? I don't know. I'm not using it, but you know, I applaud the city for at least handling the wastes differently. You know, but you know, in terms of using it, I don't know.
What's dillo dirt?
The city of Austin composts the solid waste that comes out of there's a plate of waste plant in southeast of Austin. They actually process all of it. They call it solid waste processing. You basically take all the shit from Austin and turn it into compost, which is pretty nice. They say don't put it on your vegetable gardens, you can put it on your flower gardens, and then they spray it over hay fields for livestock that are going to graze on it, which I tend to wonder about. But, you know, but at least you have to applaud that step. That's pretty big for a city to.
Those hay fields are the some of the highest producing and most nutrient-rich fields. They're sought after.
I'm telling you, quality makes a huge amount of difference. My concern would be what else did you get with it?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
But yeah, you know, it just continues to astonish me that Vito's fertility and you getting that right. This is a book, by the way, Carol Steinfeld wrote on urine, so you don't have to believe me. And then this is the human book, so you know this. Probably should be available here. I'll talk about it in a while. I was in the orchard one day and I said, oh my God, look at there. These two trees, the same species, they're blackjack oaks. And they're like, wow, this one is just so vibrant and great, and then this one is almost dead. It's pathetic. This was last, July or August. And it turns out that what I do is I have some pans of water. The geese really like to sit under this tree in the afternoon, and because it's got a really good dense shade. And so it gets just a little bit more water, and then it just gets the fertility that these geese give it on a regular basis. And that was the difference. You can really see it. So I'm going to have to do some other comparison stuff sometime. I'll go into a couple more key points on the biointensive method, and I just want to, they're really good gardening things to know about anyway, but I really do recommend the biointensive method. First of all, he does a lot of composting because your fertility, your ongoing fertility. Another distinction between commercial farmers and homesteaders is we're trying to do this all on site. Commercial farmers buy a huge amount of inputs. They have to. You know, I've got a friend of mine who's gardening or farming real intensively, 1.5 acres, which is about a good amount for an organic farmer. And he comes in huge totes full of chicken manure pellets and all kinds of stuff. And I said, you know, could you do this? He said, yeah, I could do this without all of that. He said, but I'd need like 3 times the I have to be rotating and doing all kinds of cover crops. And quite frankly, if I add, you know, 25 cents of compost every season, then I can sell that broccoli is going to get so much bigger and better. I can sell it for $1 more. You know, so you know they're you know the fertility is huge. So anyway, I got off on a tangent there with the distinction between. But we're talking about how do we grow all our fertility on farm. We're not talking about going out and buying it somewhere or you know, getting it from somewhere else to do it sustainably. One of the other things about the biointensive method is once you establish a bed, you amend it only at the start, and then from then on, you just try to grow the fertility in there, and you never step on the bed. That soil that's in there is your garden bed. You never step on it. That's what the soil picture is all about. You really honor that. He has a method if you have a clay-based soil where you double dig, because he wants to honor that the soil layers have a lot of different layers. The very top layer often has the most activity and the most nourishment, and then you get further and further down, and the better your soil it is, the better it is going down. You know, it stays good. And he developed a method with a particular type of fork to help aerate, because most people that are farming or gardening have a clay-based soil, if they have a soil. My soil happens to be sand, and we talked to John, and he says, you know, you don't need a double dig sand. You know, this doesn't make any sense, actually. So, but you want to be very careful when you're working in your garden to honor. You don't just completely turn all the soil over. You're real careful about what layers you're working with, and he makes those distinctions. Another thing that he does is you grow all of your starts in small little flats. So here I am seeding them out, and then here these are actually little corn plants. Because you can, you know, I mean, what have I got? A cubic foot of soil right there, and then I'm growing, you know, 80 plants. If I'd have stuck them all out in the ground and seeded them out, then I'd have, you know, a whole bed, 100 square feet of soil that I was, you know, we're waiting and waiting while those things grow. Here we can grow them in these little tiny flats, and as they get bigger, then we transplant them out. But meanwhile, that whole big garden bed can be used for something else. So when I say this man has really figured this out in a minimal amount of space, I mean that sincerely. He's figured out even how to rotate your timing so you can keep maximizing it. Another thing he has pioneered the use in is hexagonal planting for your crops. And you can see if you've got the same size bed, traditional gardening, they just run straight rows. Here, if you plant them this way, more closely together, one, as they grow out, they start to be more of a natural weed repellent because they're starting to cover up more of the space. And two, they create their own little microclimate with transpiration of water. But going back to that fertility again, when you're planting this intensively, you have got to be putting your compost back on there intensively because you can very quickly deplete the soil. So again, fertility is a big issue. We're going to talk now about some different types of crops to think about, some distinctions about crops that we probably didn't have before. One is carbon crops, and those are the crops that you're growing just because you're going to turn them into compost or just because you're going to add to your soil fertility. Those may be things, they may be your beans, they may be, we grow rye or oats sometimes to turn things under, vetch, lab, there's a whole bunch of different plants that we grow just so that they'll grow and make a whole bunch of leaves so that we can either compost that or turn that over into the soil. The other distinction is a calorie crop versus a nutritive crop. So your lettuces and things like that, they don't have a whole lot of calories, but they got a lot of kale, they got a whole lot of nutrition in them. But other crops, the calorie crops, are ones that you eat to fill your belly so that you can feel good and keep going. And calorie crops are amazingly challenged to grow. But those are some distinctions. So those would be your beets. Even onions are considered a calorie crop, and I eat them that way. Just big batches of them. Corn would be another calorie crop. A lot of people, and I got this from the first point here, Irish potatoes cannot be sustainably grown in Central Texas, and a lot of people